Good morning. Isn't it nice that when we get outside today, it's going to warm up? Thank the Lord for that. I'm thankful I don't live in Minnesota today, which is nice. We've been going through a series talking about spiritual renewal. I think there is a revival, renewal going on right now in our country. It started at Asbury Theological Seminary in Wilmore, Kentucky, and it's been going to some other college campuses. I actually went to see a Christian movie this week, and it was packed. And this was at the Regal Theater, and they applauded in the movie at different parts. It was exciting. So it's good to see this renewal. Last week I talked about spiritual renewal in your personal life in Romans 12:1 and 2, about letting your bodies be a sacrifice for God. And this week I'm moving from your personal renewal to the renewal in our corporate congregation, in our church. And this could be thought of as our church and generally the church in the world. But we definitely don't need just to focus on ourselves. So this week we're taking that look at renewal and talking about spiritual gifts and what Paul is talking about. We're going further in chapter 12. And so to remind you where we were, I'm going to look at 12 first, verse 1. And this was talking about our individual renewal. Paul says, I urge you, brothers, by the mercies of God, because of all the good things God has done for you, which is your spiritual service of worship, to not be conformed to this world, which is so easy to do, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, and that's the key for really the whole chapter, renewing your mind, so that you may prove what the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable and perfect. So last week we talked about that renewal individually, and now starting in the next verse in just a minute, we're going to look at it, what it means corporately, talking about how we give back. I want you to imagine for me that you were buying a present for your kids, or if you don't have kids, just imagine, maybe your nephew or something, nephews, nieces. So you wanted to get them something they just really liked. Maybe it was for Christmas or their birthday, and so you researched it, you found out what kids their age like, you asked them, you talked to them, you dialogued about it, they showed you pictures, and you thought, okay, they're going to love it. They're going to love it. You get it, and then they open the gift, and they never play with it. They look at it, open it, set it down, and they never go back with it. How would that make you feel if you spent a lot of money on this gift and they never used it? Well, think about God has given each of us gifts. God has given us things that only we have in the unique combination. And what are you using those? Do we use those to the extent that the gift is that's been given to us? That's what I want to talk about today, about using our gifts to renew our fellowship. Paul says, it starts off with this idea of humility. He says, for through the grace given to me, I say to everybody among you. This is for everybody, not just the people who are in some kind of leadership roles, but to everybody, not to think more highly of himself than he ought to think, but to think so as to have, the word is sobriety, sober judgment. And so this idea that we ought to be humble, humility is unique when you think about it, because when you have humility, people don't notice that you have it. If they notice that you're humble, if you're fabulously humble, you're not really humble. I mean, that's the most important thing about humility. Nobody notices it but you. And it's ironic that 9 times out of 10, if you ask somebody if they have humility, they will say, well, yeah, because they feel like they're modest. But modesty is not the same as humility. Humility is not meekness. It's not belittling yourself. C.S. Lewis, I think, had the best definition of humility. He said, humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking about yourself less. Do you do that? Do you think about yourself less? We live in a culture today where people are not thinking about themselves less. Do you know that over 1,000 selfies are posted to Instagram every 10 seconds? The average millennial will take 25,000 pictures of their face in their lifetime. That's expected. Have you ever taken a picture of your face? Are you usually frowning when you do it? No. It's usually your best face. Are you thinking less about yourself when you take 25,000 pictures? Are you thinking about yourself less? This idea of humility, and humility is with, you can say, well, these people who are very powerful don't have humility. I think of a few examples. Did you know Warren Buffett still lives in the same house he's lived for the last 50 years? Do you think he can afford a new house? I think so. Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook, he drives a Volkswagen hatchback, an old one. The guy that founded IKEA, I cannot pronounce his name, Navigar Kamprad, something like that. He flies economy wherever he goes. That's better than some tele-evangelist. You know, be humble. And here Paul is saying, if you want to be in the body of Christ, if you want to be an influencer, okay, it's the opposite of what social influencers are. Do you know what social influencers are? You know, they do things like for fashion or for dressing up, and they take pictures of themselves. And for instance, if they were taking a picture of their bed, okay, they would fix it up just right and make it look great and have the light just perfect on it. But if you backed up from the bed, the rest of the room looks terrible. And they create this image of themselves. And I wonder sometimes if people are comparing themselves to this special image that you have posted, and then they're feeling bad because they don't look good as you do, is that a negative thing? Yes. Paul says, no, humility is what's important. This idea of not putting yourself out there as the best. And that's one of the keys to having a great fellowship, having a great church. And by the way, the same thing goes in between churches. Sometimes churches practice what I might call the seesaw mentality. They put themselves up by putting other churches down. I remember one church put a big sign in the front of the church, and it said, "We're not your grandparents' church." Now, I get what they were trying to say. They were a contemporary church. But how do their grandparents feel about that sign? Oh, yeah. We're not terrible and way out of it like we are. You know, every church has a unique gifts, unique ability to reach people of different kinds. And so we shouldn't look at others and compare ourselves to them. That's not a good idea. That's not a good idea to compare ourselves to other people in the church. And Paul says here in verse 4, "For just as we have many members in one body," your physical body has hands and arms and eyes, "and all the members do not have the same function, so we who are many are one body in Christ and individually members of one another." And so the parts of your body, sometimes parts that you don't even know about, you really need. You can't even see the kidney, but you need them. you need at least one. There are things in your body that people don't bring attention to, but they're important. And in our church fellowship, everybody should have a role. God gives different gifts to every believer. Okay? And you might say, well, what are my gifts? Well, we have got a couple of tools to help you find that out if you don't already know. This week, I think on Thursday, you were sent an email, if you have email, about doing a spiritual gift inventory. It's one you can do online. We also have a paper version of both of them. So you can take this, there's a copy of it out there in the Welcome Center, and take it home and get you a cup of coffee or your favorite beverage and take this kind of a test, and it helps you identify your spiritual gifts, which are different than your just natural abilities. And then we have a piece of paper that has the different opportunities to serve in this church and how you might want to serve. And you just circle 3 of them and list 1, 2, 3 for your priority and to think about how you could use. I mean, somebody could ask you this question: if you quit coming to this church, would it affect the church in any way? No. I mean, other than you just not sitting here on Sunday morning. All of us should be using the gifts that we have, and they're different in many ways. Paul says, 12:6, since we have gifts that differ according to the grace given to us, each of us to exercise them accordingly. Your gift is preaching or speaking, you use that gift. If it's teaching, if it's serving, if it's encouraging, whatever that gift is. There's an interesting parable that accents this important principle. There was a group of animals. They decided to do something significant to improve their world, so they organized an animal school. And the curriculum included swimming, running, climbing, and flying. The duck, an excellent swimmer, was deficient in the other areas, so he majored in climbing and running and flying. And his swimming began to suffer. The rabbit, a superior runner, was forced to spend so much time in other classes that he soon lost much of his famous speed. The squirrel, who'd been rated A as a climber, dropped to a C because instructors spent hours trying to teach him how to fly. And the eagle got in trouble because he flew to the top of the tree, as he was accustomed to doing when he was told he had to climb to the top of the tree. You know, all of us have a certain gift package. We have certain things that we do well. To find what you do well and to do that in your community, in this community of faith, will renew us. Because a lot of churches, our church sometimes, I've been that way, only 10% of the people do all the stuff that goes on. And that's not healthy for anybody, and those 10% or the rest of the 80%, 90%. So we ought to all get involved and use the gifts. Now, he lists 7 gifts here. These are not exhaustive. There are 20 gifts listed in the Bible. Some of them are in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, but the ones here are just examples. And so I'll look at these examples for just a minute. The first one, he says, if you have the gift of prophecy according to the proportion of his faith. So the gift of prophecy would be like if you have an ability to speak into somebody's life, to give them a word of advice, something that God gives you and you say, you know, I just feel like you need to hear this. And so that would be the gift of prophecy. And in the Old Testament, the prophet was unique, okay? We don't have, I think, modern-day prophets like the Old Testament prophets. The Old Testament prophets would say to the people of Israel, if you do this, you'll get this. If you don't do this, you won't get this. And their prophecy always came true, or if they would be killed. So it was pretty heavy. But prophecy today would be speaking into somebody's life. Another service, if service in his serving. The word for service here is diakonos, which we get the word deacon. And the idea of the word diaco was in serving tables, like waiters, okay? And our deacons do a whole lot of service. This morning, they came and they made the Lord's Supper, and there were other things that they did this morning. I'm not going to tell you what some of them were, but you wouldn't want to do them. And they have to be done. And they need to be done. And so they had that gift of serving others, and they used that gift. And it helps all of us. What about teaching? The next one is teaching, didaskale. If you are good at teaching, then you should teach. You know, and teaching is an important part of what a church does. We have people that teach classes in our church. They do some of them right after this service. And we have a list of them if you're interested. And then we have a few classes during the week at different times. And it's very important ministry. Another one is exhortation. And we don't usually use this word in this way, but the word means encouragement. You know anybody that has that gift of encouragement? Whenever you're around them, they always say something positive. They're always lifting somebody up. You know, sometimes when I'm working with a group, I always want somebody in the group to have this gift. Yeah, I mean, they may have a great resume and they may have a lot of education, but you need somebody who is positive. and who will lift other people up. And some people have that gift, and how necessary that is in a community. Another gift is someone who gives with liberality. Some people have the gift, and I could point you to them, but I don't want to point them out because we're all supposed to be humble. But there are some people who have that gift. They're always stepping up and saying, look, let me just take care of it. I remember one time, one of our young people, it was announced that if you went to this pizza place and you bought their pizza, then they'd give a small percentage of it to this person so they could go on this school trip. Well, somebody in our church asked me, how much does she need? And just gave me all of it for that young person because they had the gift of liberality. You know, they were generous. And some people have that gift. Another gift is leadership, which is very important. Be able to lead others, to be able to know how to do things in the right way, how to organize things, how to put things together, how to plan stuff. Are you a planner? Are you a leader? Can you motivate people? We need that. You know, that's part of what we need in our fellowship. Another gift is shows mercy. Now, mercy is someone who really has a heart to help people. To maybe you work with the homeless week. That's your best week of the year. You really love doing that. Or maybe it's doing something else that helps poor people or poor people who have really needs and hurts. And not only do you love doing it, but Paul says you should do it with cheerfulness. And that should be the way your attitude is. And wouldn't it be great if we have lots of people with these different gifts that make up our fellowship? It renews us because you have a gift and you're allowed to use it. You know, some churches you get into, sometimes ours has been in the past, and nobody ever asks you. Nobody ever asks you if you could sing or if you could, do this kind of things or if you like to set up and take down stuff. And so nobody asks you, and so you never really volunteered. You got used to not doing anything, and now it's gotten too late and too long, so no, you don't want to ask. But you can. This is a new start. And Paul says all this is about loving. And let love be without hypocrisy. The word here is about acting. Okay? The actors in the Greek world at this time would wear these masks. Okay? And they would wear one mask that maybe had a frown and one had a smile on it. And it was part of their acting thing that they would wear different masks in their dramas. And Paul is saying, we want you to be authentically loving. Not just act like it. Not just say the words. But really be a loving group of people, that we love each other. That's what it's all about. That's why we're doing our things. We're not doing it out of guilt or somebody's making us. And Paul lists a bunch of short things now that we should be doing. First, he says, abhor what is evil. If it's evil, just, let's not do anything evil. Let's not promote or do anything. He says, cling to what is good. Cling to the good things. Just be devoted to one another in brotherly love. This is the word Philadelphos. Okay, we get the word Philadelphia, brotherly love. That we should love each other. That's an important part of the love we should have. That we treat each other in preference. That once we become part of a community of faith, we're adopted by Christ, and it makes us all brothers and sisters, so we're related. That means you love each other. My brothers and sisters, we love each other. I don't always like them. And we have gotten in multiple fights over my lifetime. They're still my brothers and sisters. I'd do anything for them. It links us together. And you are linked together. You're part of our community. And we're brothers and sisters in Christ. And he says, don't lag behind in diligence. Don't let anybody outserve you. Not saying that one gift is any more important than another gift. I mean, if you were a fixer-upper around your house and somebody says, what's the best tool you got? Well, you really couldn't say that, because if you were going to do something and need a screwdriver, you need a screwdriver. If you need something else to solder, you need a soldering iron. The best gift depends on the job. So we should not lag behind in diligence and all do what we're called to do. fervent in spirit, serving the Lord, passionate in what we're doing. We rejoice in hope. World needs hope today. Persevering when we go through tribulation. Devoted to prayer, that we all should be in prayer. Contributed to the needs of the saints. And practice hospitality. You know, we should be hospitable to each other. Treat each other like you would want people to treat you. And this image that he puts out there for what our community is supposed to be like, it's a beautiful image. And in his world, when people started living like this, it transformed the world. It transformed the church, because the church, people persecuted Jesus, they crucified him, but within just a few hundred years after that, this huge church had grown and flourished because people were practicing these things. Because all of us long for this kind of community. We long for authentic community. People love us. They're not being fake. They're doing things for others. They're serving one another. They do out of a core of humility. That's the image we have today. And so I challenge us that we live that out.